So thank you everyone for joining us today. I know we seem to be dealing with one crisis after another. If it's not COVID-19, it's the pollution. And the response seems to be to stay inside, to have lockdowns. And I know there has been, there have been a lot of discussions on how lockdowns have been very negative for women. When you're confined within the home, conflicts increase. With conflicts within the shared household leads to domestic violence. But there has not been that much discussion on what happens when there are less women using public spaces, going out. I mean, speaking for myself personally, I have not used the metro or public transport now since March 2020. I've been relying on private vehicles, which is much more expensive. So it limits the number of times I go out. I think about it carefully. In India, the issue of violence against women in the public area, I think it got a lot of international attention after the Nirbhaya case in 2012. And then there was, everyone knows about the Nirbhaya gang rape, but then there was also the Shakti Mills rape case in Bombay, where there was a journalist who was sent to cover a story in a deserted area, and she was raped by some men. And then also the Uber rape case, where where the victim fell off to sleep in the taxi, and then she was raped by the taxi driver. And I'm very glad that Ankita from Safety Pin is here, because Safety Pin then designed an app which was used by women to map the risk perception that they feel, and many of us have used that app. But now what has happened with the COVID-19 and the lockdown, I'm looking forward to hearing from the students on how they perceive usage of public places again after such a long gap. With these few words, thank you again for joining us. And I'm also very happy that we have with us Mr. Ulrich Stork, who has joined as the director of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. The FES has, Women Power Connect has worked very closely with the FES on these various gender logs. And we are very grateful for the opportunity of having held these discussions on the impact of COVID-19 on women and on women's rights. Mr. Ulrich Stork is currently the director of the FES office in Delhi. Previously, he was working for the FES in the UK, in Greece, in the West Balkans, in Central America, and in Morocco. He has studied economics, psychology, and development planning in Frankfurt, Hamburg, and in Berlin. So welcome to Delhi, and may I request you to say a few words before we hand over to the students.
Yeah, thanks very much, and a warm welcome to all of you this afternoon. We are opening our today's Gender Lodge, and I'm very honored to have the space to speak a bit to you. Before we start our discussion on safety of women in public places and COVID-19. So as you already said, I mean, you said almost everything about me. I'm the new country director of FES here in India, and I just arrived. And I'm with the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung already since 25 years in all continents except Asia. So this is my first posting in Asia. I'm very happy to be here. Finally, I was held back by COVID, just the reason, and by the lockdowns. But now I'm happy to be here and curious to start my work here. So the gender lodges are an important part of our programs, and it's the first time that I have the opportunity to assist in this. So the gender lodges, as you probably now know me even better than I do, is a series introduced by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in India to provide a platform for India-wide deliberations on issues which matter to men, women, and other gender identities, understanding, challenging, and turning gender norms to move towards gender equality at the political, economic, and social level is the touchstone for these events. India has given a constitutional mandate providing equality to men and women of all walks of life. However, the ground realities, as you all know, is very different. Patriarchal mindsets continue to prevail amongst women and men, and ingrained gender norms continue to hamper the path to equality. This is seen very clearly through the various discriminatory indicators we have at our disposal. And the most telling is the sex ratio for India, which stands at 940 women for every 1,000 men. In order to move towards gender equality, political, economic, and social change is a must. After this brutal attack on a girl in Delhi in December 2012, what was brought to the public not only here in India but worldwide, as well in Europe, the public was once more painfully reminded on how unsafe our public spaces in India are. Over the years, we, the FAS, have addressed the aspect of gender equality through our various activities, and the series of gender lodges designed by FAS India targets at inclusion of more stakeholders to reach out beyond the group of the usual suspects of the empowerment debate. We put a special focus on reaching out to young people of all genders who have not yet been included in gender activities. For example, students. Young people form 2/3 of total population of the total population in India, and will be the crucial change agents of the future. In these challenging times, when we seem to be emerging from this pandemic, seems is very well said, because we don't know. We hope that we're emerging when we can reclaim public spaces and public lives. This seems to be just the right time to pick up conversations on the topic of gender and public spaces, and on the safety of women in these public spaces. The importance of an equal access to public spaces and to safe spaces cannot be stressed enough. It is very much in line with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals 5 and 11, the former talking about gender equality and the latter about making cities more inclusive and more safe. So these were my short introductory words. I need to apologize already that I have to leave this webinar a bit earlier, because I will be speaking in another online event of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. Sorry for that. And now I will hand over to Jody to say some words from her side. Jody, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ulrich, for setting the tone of the event and for giving us the starting point for getting into these conversations. A very warm welcome to all of you to today's Gender Log, wherein we will have discussions on safety of women in public spaces and COVID-19, how the pandemic has further shrinked the public spaces that were already difficult for women to access. Before I speak a little more about the subject at hand, I would just very briefly like to speak about the organization that we represent. Friedrich Ebert Stiftung is the oldest foundations of Germany dedicated to the principles of peace, solidarity, and social justice. From our core mission of promoting social justice, we derive the leitmotif for our work on gender justice. We have offices in about 100 countries worldwide, and in India, we have been active since 1983. In the gender unit of our India office, we've been working on women in work, women in politics, and on the issues of gender sensitization. Ulrich has already elaborated on our Gender Log series. I would just like to mention that in the last 5 years, we've had gender logs on wide-ranging issues, such as issues of home-based workers, violence in the natal family, substantive equality, And more recently, we had one on sexual harassment in digital spaces. Safety as a goal is something no one would like to refute, and yet we are all aware of the ground realities. This is an urgent and important matter, and the more we talk about it, the more we realize the work that still needs to be done in this space, which is all the more why I am so pleased that we have such eminent panelists amongst us who will take us through the nuances of this topic, an issue which touches all of us in myriad ways. I wish us all empowering discussions, stimulating conversations, and hopefully also an outline for the way ahead and the steps that we need to take on that path ahead. So with these words, I would like to hand over the proceedings back to Aisha to take the event forward. Thank you. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Everyone, in the first session, we have students from Janki Devi Memorial College and Tata Institute of Social Sciences who will present the experiences of using or not using public spaces following the pandemic. And they'll be sharing their presentations from a feminist perspective. Janki Devi Memorial College has been a part of several webinars and gender discussions organized by WPC. With support from PS, we also implemented a bystander intervention course, which is an interactive course on how bystanders can provide support to women and girls who are subjected to violence and discrimination in public spaces. Following the Me Too movement, WPC in collaboration with FES also hosted a gender log on sexual harassment of women in colleges and universities in TIS Mumbai. So with this, I would like to invite Mr. Rajiv, who is currently pursuing Masters in Women Studies from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'll just share my screen and then let me know when it's visible, and I'll talk about like my experience as a queer person for about 5 minutes. Is the screen visible?
Yes, Rajiv. We can hear.
Yeah. All right. So like home is projected as a safe space, and in the time of a pandemic, as a queer person, it was not affirming space for me personally because my presence of friends was not there, who were the ones whom I was out to, like who were aware of my identity. And then staying within the home, I could not access university space, campus spaces, which also made it difficult for me to move and express myself. Because home is a very heteronormative space from a feminist perspective. Unlike university space where we find people like us, we find a sense of community. Now coming to the idea of travel, so within Delhi specifically, when I went back there for my research work post the pandemic, the last mile connectivity was reduced because for the safety of the pandemic, some of the gates of many metro stations were closed. So because of that, one has to travel a longer way if they want to reach their destination. And this also brings up the question like, are these spaces safe where we are supposed to take a longer way? So the perspective of access itself to public space, it's not just about safety, are they safe, but also do we have the right to freedom? Do we have the right to move into those spaces where we don't have to worry about whether it's safe or not? Because we all have the fundamental right of movement. So why don't we have the right to access is also one of the questions that come up. In terms of presence of co-presence around people, so the presence of people around us give us visibility and validity to our identity, which in a campus space is very affirming for us. However, with the sense of social security, COVID-19 restrictions brought very desolation in public spaces where we won't find any people when we move into those spaces. And also everyone was masked up. So we don't know the other person who their identity is, which also makes me little scared in accessing those spaces. And along with this, the understanding around street harassment is also limited. For instance, do we see catcalling as a form of harassment or not? When catcalling uses slurs like which are queerphobic or transphobic in nature. And I like to share experience where I went for my research work to a public cafe and I was talking about the topics of gay and masculinity to my participant when 3 men came and sit next to the table and they were trying to listen to our conversation. And I immediately felt a bit unsafe because of that, because I don't know how to judge these people. So it matters like who is present in us within those surroundings and how do we perceive them. And if I move into public space, like would it make a difference? Would it have been different if it had been a university space which was not closed off due to COVID? So it also brings up the sense of social security, which group fosters a sense of social security and which group fosters a sense of threat, and why is it so? Then along with coming back to Delhi Metro again, so if we look at the structure of Delhi Metro, then there are many of the metro stations are located near colleges. Because of that, the extension of the metro space is an extension of campus space itself, where we would find students protesting, students holding events, we would have chai and we would talk about politics and stuff. There would be Momo stand, there would be places where we can buy books and stationery, but all those have been lost. So how do we look at that? Like when I went back to campus and it was just an empty road, I immediately missed all those times where there were paintings on the walls with different societies, paintings that impacted women empowerment, painting that impacted, that portrayed pride movement. And I was looking at them all alone. So I missed that sense of community also there. Then these also brings up question of mental health and disability as well. Are the COVID restrictions disabled friendly? Can disabled students also access these spaces? And what impact does it have on my mental health when I see that I'm in a space alone where earlier I used to be with my friends, where I used to enjoy the time? When I'm taking the long walk of 15-20 minutes alone, I do not feel good about it. So the impact of mental health is also something that needs to be counted. Then from a queer perspective, there's also a public space where we find it difficult to express desire. For example, if I have to hug a man in a very affectionate manner, then I might find it easier to do in a university space. But due to COVID restriction, surveillance has been increased. There is more police, there is more security around these areas where I might not feel safe or I might not feel affirming enough to make that kind of expression of my desire. And it is a known fact that queer people are also increasingly surveilled by the state and the society. For instance, if you go into metro stations, then trans people are often asked to go either through male or female security outlet, even though they might belong or affirm themselves to another gender, which increased during the COVID-19 pandemic, where there was segregation of male and female spaces. It brings up the questions, what about queer students? What about non-conforming students? What about trans students? Like, where do they belong to? Because our idea of segregation and security is based on the binary of male and female. And even though it is important to focus on women's safety, but women's safety also involves other gender identities. So how we can make it more inclusive and expansive towards is also a question. Lastly, you can see all these spaces in campus where there's a lawn, people are going for pride marches, people are just roaming around. And if you go today, all these spaces are completely empty. They almost have a dystopian look to them because students are not there. So as a student, I could wear anything, I would carry my bag and I would walk with my friends, you would take pictures and everything. But now all those spaces are completely empty. It's almost like losing a student culture, which for the queer community is almost like a queer subculture. There are places where we would take pictures, places where we would put pride posters and rainbows. We would dress like in any way we want to. And we have all lost all of them to the pandemic. And these are within the public spaces, which are extensions of our campus spaces or metro spaces. And these are also spaces where we used to feel safe. So now when we go back to these spaces and we feel a sense of disintegration of identities, so how do we respond to that? So these are some of the questions that come up when we look at public spaces, women's safety, and safety of other gender minorities after the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. Thank you for highlighting the need that we need to go beyond the gender binary and be more inclusive. Next, we have Ms. Kartika. She's a second-year sociology student from Janki Devi Memorial College. Kartika, can you please unmute yourself?
Sure. Good evening, one and all present here. I'm Kartika Sharma from second year Sociology Department of Janki Devi Memorial College, and today I will be speaking on the topic of safety of women in public places and COVID-19. During the pandemic, it was apparent through various reports released by different organizations and institutions that every form of discrimination against women escalated. Across the world, women experienced sexual harassment and other forms of gender-based violence, and it was seen in every possible public sphere. It happens in public when they step out of their home due to some important work during and after lockdown. Some individuals endeavor to take advantage of comparatively less crowd than the time denoting normalcy. It happens at their own home, which is visible through the rise in domestic violence cases. Lastly, I would also like to point out all the digital and social media platforms where the engagement of people soared due to work from home alternative, which worst impacted the students who have been a victim of online sexual harassment and cyberbullying. As a result, it reduces their ability to participate in school, colleges, workplace, and public life sphere, and hence demise their role as an individual in the society and leave them with no voice and stand on public forums because of the negative impact caused to them both physically and mentally. Parents' fear of sending their daughters out imposed restrictions on women's engagement in society. Women often, due to which, experience a sense of stigmatization, anxiety, and various other mental health concerns. Now, I would like to point out some of the reasons why, especially during and after the lockdown period, our country failed to provide a safer public space for women. First, the most disheartening reason is our failure as a human to stand up for another individual in the public sphere. Second is the lack of transport system, which was not easily available during the lockdown period, which caused a problem in traveling, resulting in more chances of such instances to occur. The third is even if such reports gets filed, inadequate investigation of the case results in no conclusion. This might be due to the indifferent attitude of the investigation agency or the normalization of such instances. Fourth, could be the desensitization towards this issue by not just only police but also by the public and individuals that make up society. Fifth is the lack of awareness of why individuals shouldn't be performing this kind of actions and what individuals should be doing to deal with such situation if faced. And last but not the least is the persistence of the patriarchal mindset in most Indian families, which are among the reasons that Indian women remained unsafe. Although every problem has a solution that we can look for to bring the desired change in this context. Here, I would like to suggest some solutions and steps that can be taken into account. First is we need to start standing not just for ourselves, but also for others. Secondly, we can make the public aware of the helpline numbers and several initiatives that our government introduced to ensure its proper implementation. Thirdly, there is a need to ensure a better transportation system and designing of public spaces and workplaces. For example, in every locality, there should be a government sponsored NGOs or such institutions where the victims can ask for help, and even the police are expected to play a very active and responsible role in such matters. Here, I would also like to pay emphasis on the need for a more strict and striking regulation system for various online interaction platforms. Lastly, we can work on the problems that I addressed before, and that can be only achieved through making people aware of the problems that what impact such instances cause to an individual and making them realize the sensitive side of such instances. The most important initiative that we all at our level can take, according to me, is to sensitize students and children from their school onwards towards such issues. For example, where we can teach them the most important concept of mutual consent. For example, stressing on the words like no, maybe, or I don't know should always be contemplated as no. Now, I would like to end my speech with two lines of a poem written by me. So it goes like this. हूँ नहीं अबला नारी में, जब हिम्मत रखती हूँ दूसरों के लिए खड़े होने की, खुद की लड़ाई कैसे ना लड़ पाऊंगी मैं। है निराश मन मेरा तुम्हारी खुद गर्जी से, कि जब पीछे मुड़कर देखा तो खड़ा ना था कोई साथ हमारी। लड़ रही थी अकेले ही अपने सामाजिक दर्जे की लड़ाई, फिर भी उम्मीद बंधी है तुमसे तुम्हारे साथ की। Through this, the only thing that I want to convey is that it's not like that a single person couldn't fight for their right alone. It's just that when people come together, the voice of one eventually becomes the voice of several, especially of those who couldn't show up. And through this support, we can create more pressure for a change and to eliminate all evil practices that persist in our society and to make the world a better and peaceful place for an individual to live in. That's all for my side. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kartika. I think the poem beautifully captures what you really want to, let people know about what really the problem is. Next, we have Miss Divya from TIS. She's pursuing Human Resource Management and Labor Relations. Divya, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, yeah. I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much, everyone, for giving me this opportunity. I am Divya. I'm pursuing Human Resource Management and Labor Relations in TISS, Mumbai. So I'd like to start this by speaking about commuting, which is one of my personal, issues that I faced even when I used to work before at Hyderabad. So as you can see from these pictures, the one thing that glares at us from these pictures is that we have deserted roads, not just in the mornings, but also dark at night. Now with COVID and the pandemic, we have very few people on the roads. It is a little bit of an irony that the more the people, if they are men, we get scared. But when there are very less people and they're very scattered all over, even then we get scared. So the problem here is there are deserted roads and empty public transport as well, due to which a lot of people who are, let's say, working women, have increased dependency on shared cabs due to the lack of public transport. Another thing is, just last day, one of my friends was saying how many of the train coaches are completely empty. And due to lockdowns, not just the number of trains have decreased, but they have taken off the ladies' coaches in many trains, due to which a lot of us are using the general coaches. And this might seem like a very trivial and very small issue, but it does induce some fear, especially once it gets dark. Street illumination has always been a challenge in the streets of India. Now, lesser maintenance staff due to COVID is causing lesser lights and lesser maintenance of the street lights, and therefore darker roads. Now, there are deserted roads which are making up for double the fear. As you can see, I've included a chain snatching photo on the side. Now, there is again an irony here, right? So with COVID, we are all masked up. While it is safe to be masked up as per regulations, when we see men or when we see people on a bike with masks coming across us and we are wearing gold chains or we are wearing jewelry, we are scared of, they will we'll at least automatically walk away from the bike. This is it's an instinct reaction that happens, and I myself have done this. So this is increased now because people are wearing masks all over and they have a helmet all over now as well. So now everybody is masked up. We are not able to understand who is who. The next is access to parks, evening stalls, and recreational activities, which have also been difficult, not just after pandemic, but before pandemic as well. But with the pandemic, the parks have closed up and there is no concept of evening walks for women unless they're inside a gated community. So this is in space of commuting. The next is with respect to public spaces. Daily wage women laborers, those who are working on daily income, they're exceedingly vulnerable to sexual abuse in open spaces, especially where there are lesser customers, bystanders, and the police. And not just this, but nowadays women have an additional caregiving role as well. They're playing triple roles of both caregivers and they're doing disproportionate amount of domestic work and their income generating work. Now, additional responsibility of commuting to various places also to fulfill these work is also going ahead with the pandemic. The reduced bystanders. As we open this discussion with the bystander effect itself, we can see that there are lesser alibis to sexual harassment in public spaces, due to which many cases of unreported or many cases of abuse goes unreported, or they're closed off, citing various reasons. And as we can see what a bystander effect actually is, right now, we'd feel that someone else really will help that particular person, while we ourselves are capable of helping the person. Access to healthcare. With healthcare workers being overburdened with COVID duties, women who face sexual violence, they have had only limited access to sexual and reproductive healthcare. Approachability to law enforcers. Lack of police staff, even lesser number of women police officers, since many of them are involved in checking for COVID regulation, masks and sanitizers, etc., which is also equally important. But now it puts us at a disadvantage. The last, but not the least, is the campus spaces. Here, as already my friends mentioned before, we have lots of peer discussions and learnings, specifically important in developmental stages of primary education. Inclusion has lost its true meaning. Now that we're all on the pandemic and on the online world, the word inclusion is emerging more as a fad word rather than actually creating inclusive spaces within the classroom. And on the top right, you can see a picture that's of an empathy circle. Now, these are all illustrative pictures, but the tolerance to hold an open mindset to look at various perspectives and listen to problems with each other has largely reduced, because bringing everyone together in a Zoom meeting and actually creating the same space is not possible anymore. Campus engagements like art festival, webinars, workshops, again, as we can see, to actually motivate people to join discussions, learn something new. It's all decreased with COVID pandemic. And hopefully things open up and we're all able to go back to the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Divya. The last presentation is from Ananya. She's a second-year sociology student from Janki Devi. Ananya, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening to one and all present here. My name is Ananya Pandey and I am a second-year student from Sociology Department of Janki Devi Memorial College. Our topic for discussion today is safety of women in public spaces and COVID-19. And are we back to normal again? As defined by the UN Habitat in 2015, public spaces are all places publicly owned or of public use, accessible and enjoyable by all for free. They are important for socializing and discussions, debate, celebrations, recreation, and both group or individual activities. They are markers of vitality and inclusiveness. The claim to the fundamental and radical shaping power that comes with the right to such public spaces and participation did not come easy for women and other suppressed groups until they started demanding the right to be seen, heard, and directly influence the state and society. It is to no surprise that the public sphere is a biased one and against an ideal scenario prevents equal participation based on social and political inequalities. The domination of the patriarchal structure of a society and the often misogynistic nature of the same hold women as men's property and hence objectified. The constant struggle for women in India to access public spaces is demonstrated and reinforced in their everyday lives through gender norms, gendered regulations, and religious values as well. Women cannot perceive any space as safe at all times, as anything can go wrong for anyone. The sense of lack of security is even often felt in our own neighborhoods, which otherwise are considered as safe by most participants. Incidents of harassment and fear of crime impede women's access to public spaces and in turn they restrict rights, leading to the feeling of alienation. Indian cities have witnessed a considerable increase in crimes against women, compelling women to avoid or minimize the use of public spaces. Women also fear being blamed for going out at night in these male-dominated spaces instead of actually being able to express themselves. In India, a woman faces harassment every 51 minutes in a public space. According to the National Crime Records Bureau, incidences of crime against women was 0.406 million in 2019, a whooping 17.7% increase in 2014. And there's a mismatch between the estimated envisions of policymakers and planners and that what women actually experience as they access and use the public spaces. And minimal attention is given to the same. One of the studies of the Unified Traffic and Transportation Infrastructure Center indicates that women are more susceptible to sexual harassment in crowded public spaces and assaults such as rape in deserted public spaces. In such disputed scenarios, the role of responsible bystanders becomes very important in regulating gender-biased crimes. Violence has generally been found to increase in the face of pandemics as the social infrastructures are challenged, thus compounding the already existing weaknesses and conflicts. As a result, the existing gender inequality is worsened by the pandemic situations. Further, procuring necessities such as water, food, etc. gets especially difficult for women and children. Throughout history, during any severe calamity such as a pandemic, sexual and gender issues are often sidelined as not so important agendas. But these are the periods when the rise of such discriminatory cases increase. There are a number of reasons for such increase in gender-based violence cases. Economic dependence is a major cause for domestic violence. During the pandemic and quarantine, amidst the loss of jobs, economic securities and travel restrictions, this phenomena had a greater impact as women became economically dependent on their male counterparts. The lack of access to telecommunication by women in India, in comparison to men, made it more difficult for women to adapt to the changing conditions, further contributing to the dependency, which further facilitates conditions for gender-based violence, but also makes it difficult to leave their perpetrators. It has been time and again observed that economic stress leads to different forms of coping mechanisms, and often in such societies, it takes the form of gender-based violence. Increase in male unemployment led to a rise in domestic violence, whereas when altered, in case of female unemployment, a decrease in violence against women was observed. And this makes the persistence of patriarchal dominance, feelings of emasculation, and concept of gender roles very clear. This distorted power dynamics at home, resulting to gender-based violence, got even more difficult to keep in check during the pandemic, as the police were unable to access and tackle such cases amongst other priorities. The rise in mental health issues during the pandemic resulted in an elevation in related issues such as alcoholism, which tends to facilitate gender-based violence. During the pandemic, a clear rise in the sale of alcohol was noted, which can be used as an estimation for the increased number of domestic harassments that may have occurred. Economic strain, substance abuse, and isolation all tend to increase the risk of domestic violence. Women were imposed with many restrictions in freedom to movements and going out before pandemic itself. Rather, with the onset of the risk, regulations, and concerns in the COVID era, these regulations got reinforced and women were not allowed to go out, even for basic necessities in some families. Instead, the male member were asked to arrange the same. This led to unhealthy suppressive conditions and an upper hand for male members to make the decisions. People, their characteristics, and their actions in public spaces shape perceptions of safety amongst the women. The presence of a crowd is a debatable factor when related to a comfort it may provide to women in a public setting. Lively spaces and busy roads, on the other hand, where many shopkeepers and bystanders may be present, they provide a sense of safety to the women. Well-maintained spaces impart a sense of order, and thus they are also perceived as safe. On the other hand, male-dominated spaces still continue to be considered as unsafe. An increase in male unemployment was associated with the increase of interpersonal violence against women, where an increase in women unemployment was associated with the decrease. Despite being a global phenomenon, gender-based violence continues to be a highly underreported issue due to the stigma and social pressures. It could also be because of the distorted power dynamics at home, resulting in abuse and gender violence that escapes the scrutiny of anyone from outside. The problem gender-based violence during the pandemic further worsens because, again, the outsider factor cannot be interfering in the family matters, and it gets really difficult for the female members to ask for help. Conduct of such behavior for entertainment, a sense of solidarity among men, or unintended harassment are often results of internalization of patriarchal ideas, resulting in the exclusion of women from the public sphere, affecting their rights. Such men tend to perceive that through harassment, they maintain privileges of space over women and patriarchal beliefs of control over women's body. And this has continued even during the pandemic period. As a substantial number of women use public transport to work, insecurity and lack of safety in the mode of travel also curbs workplace participation. Further, I believe going back to the normal we perceived before the pandemic, it was not ideal. Though once conditions improve, it will be easier for the men to get back and adjust going back into the workforce. Though the same would not be the case for women who will be curbed for public access and the burden of domestic duties. in today's world where we are discussing the possibilities of a genderless society, winning over the basic binary gender-based discrimination will be a strong step towards achieving the goal and a sustainable society. Hence, policy formulation needs to keep in mind gender and equality as primary factors as well to move forward, to be able to at least go back to the pre-COVID opportunities beyond gender differences. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ananya. Thank you for highlighting how safety and mobility of women in public spaces is a multidimensional issue which impacts their access to work, their mental health, and the services. Yeah, so moving forward for a panel discussion, our first speaker is Ms. Ankita Kapoor. She is the Assistant Program Manager at SafetyPin. She has a background in architecture and urban planning and works on data analysis, representation, formulation of recommendations for creating safe public spaces. Ankita also manages projects and partnership relations. With a keen interest in research on urban mobility, her work focuses on issues of gender and urban mobility. She is an alumni of CEPT University, Ahmedabad, and has worked with L&T Constructions for over 3 years before joining SafetyPin. Now, SafetyPin is a social organization working with a wide range of urban stakeholders, including governments, to make public spaces safer and more inclusive for women. They have developed 3 apps which collects data on women's safety, which is then shared with urban stakeholders for making public spaces more safe and inclusive for women. Ankita, can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, am I audible, Aisha?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'd like to thank FES and WPC for this opportunity. And I'd like to also congratulate and thank all the speakers for the wonderful presentation. I think this topic of COVID and women's safety is a very important topic and very relevant in today's terms. We at SafetyPin have also tried to look at this issue of the impact of women's safety, the impact of COVID on the women's safety in public spaces and public transport. So recently we collaborated with the World Bank and we had done a study with the World Bank team in Colombo, and we had conducted an online survey of about 300 participants from Colombo, where we tried to understand the differences in their travel pattern, the impact of COVID-19 and related restrictions on their use of public spaces and especially public transport. And going forward, like after the lockdown has been eased out and the public transport is now available for people, how has been the response of the users, particularly women? So I have a small presentation. I'd just like to share my screen. Just a second. Is it visible?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so like I said, we had done an online survey in Sri Lanka, where we kind of had looked at travel patterns and the use of public spaces and public transport by different user groups in Sri Lanka. So this survey was done later last year around December, and then we had published a report in April 2021. So this report is also available on our website. I can share the link later. So basically, just a second. Are the slides changing?
Yes, Ankita, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so as I said, so basically we had spoken to a mixed group. So since the survey was online, so a lot of our respondents belong to middle income and upper income groups, because they were the ones who had access to internet and social media at that time. So the results like pretty much show that the vehicle ownership is quite low among women. So as compared to men, the vehicle ownership is very less for women. Also, what was starkly observed was the difference in travel pattern of the respondents. So before the lockdown, both men and women were dependent on walking in their everyday lives. But after the lockdown, this kind of reduced, though the males even continue to walk, but for females, walking and cycling reduced drastically. And they had to turn to private vehicles for their everyday commute. And what was also important was there was a drastic decrease in the use of public transport, like especially buses. So the women, especially for women, for both men and women, the percentage of public transport usage dropped from almost 50% to 10% after the lockdown. I'll discuss the reasons that came up in the study later on. Just a second, I'm having some internet issues. One second. Yeah. So also our survey captured that because of the pandemic and because of the restrictions of the lockdown restrictions that were in place in Colombo, there was a decrease in travel for all purposes like work, household chores, care work, and leisure. Everything kind of decreased. And later on, we'll also see that this was like for women, household chores, care work is also one of the main things why they step out of the house. So once that kind of came to a halt with online schooling and education, so for a lot of time, women were just confined to their houses, because of which there was an increase in domestic violence cases as well. And also, like we know that even before the pandemic, the public spaces were mostly used by men. So even in Colombo, the studies showed similar results. For instance, public parks, more than women, 40% men visited parks as compared to just 22% women. It was only in public spaces like supermarkets or neighborhood shops that women would go out. So we have almost equal number of men and women using public spaces like the supermarkets. Otherwise, in all other public spaces, men would frequently use public spaces as compared to women. I think I would like to skip this one now. So coming to the main point of some of the concerns of using public spaces and public transport. Obviously, crowded places like I think one of the students also mentioned. So the sense of safety is impacted by the number of people who are present in a public space. So when we see more people in a public space, we sometimes tend to feel safer. But if those people are, just men and there are no women or children, then women tend to feel unsafe. However, in the context of COVID, this was slightly different. In public spaces or even public transport, if you see more people and if you see that people are not wearing masks or not following COVID-19 related protocols, a lot of people, a lot of respondents were hesitant to use these spaces. Also, what came out strongly was that unavailability of digital payment options was another reason why people would not want to use public transport or public spaces like parks or other places where there were tickets to enter to the public spaces, because they didn't want to deal with cash and there were no other digital payment options. So that was also one reason. Then, like I think someone mentioned in the presentation also, that public transport frequency was reduced. So in many cases, there was a lot of waiting at the bus stops, and the frequency of public transport was not enough. So those who could afford would try to take shared modes, or try to take private vehicles if possible. Also, some people, a smaller percentage of people also said that because of the increase in public transport fares, they were not able to use public transport. And when we talk about public spaces, what also came out strongly was the lack of dedicated cycling and walking infrastructure in our cities, which is also a major deterrent for people to use public spaces and public transport. So when we talk about public transport, it's just not the vehicular experience. It's also access to the public transport or access to the public space, which has to be ensured and which has to be safer. So we need a well-designed walk paths, sidewalks. We need strong paratransit modes. We need bicycles, so that once a person gets down from a public transport, he or she can, reach to their homes safely without any fear or hesitation. So then this survey also kind of looked at the overall well-being of the respondents in context of COVID-19. So as you can see, almost 25%, 1/4 of the respondents said that they did face some form of stress during the pandemic, and more females than men were impacted because of this. Some people felt isolated and disconnected because they were confined to their homes and they could not go out or socialize and meet people. A lot of other people also felt stress because of financial stress, because of loss of jobs or loss in their business. A very small section of people also said that they were positively impacted by the pandemic, since now they had more time at their hand and they could use that time for health or spending more time with their family at home. This also kind of shows the impact of COVID-19 on work and education. So almost 56% of people, the students basically who were respondents, shifted to online classes. What also came out strongly in our survey was that about 11% students dropped out from school and university. So it's not that everybody had access to internet and everybody could everybody had a laptop or mobile phone for online classes, and a lot of students also had to drop out of education. And I think this will continue to be the case going forward. I don't think a lot of students, especially girls in lower income families, will be able to come back to school because of this pandemic. Also, a lot of people face economic losses such as pay cuts, and they also had to, some of them even had to lose their jobs or had to consider changing their jobs so that they could for financial stability. And in context of public transport, what came out was that a lot of people are not willing to come back to public transport, and they do not want to use public transport, and they feel unsafe in using public transport. And they are trying to look at different alternatives, maybe buy a cycle or buy a two-wheeler, so that they feel safer while commuting in public spaces. So this section, the last section of our survey, had also looked at how the COVID-19 had impacted the perception of women's safety in public spaces. So almost 46% of the respondents said that they had faced some form of sexual harassment either before the pandemic or during the pandemic. And as you can see, most of them were women. Also, some of them were, almost 30% were aware of the helpline numbers, and they could reach out to emergency helpline numbers like police or the local NGOs in Sri Lanka in case they felt, in case of distress. But what also is interesting is to see that what is the change in perception of sexual harassment instances of the people. So a lot of people said, this is just 20%, but I think when we look at a country level thing, these figures also make sense, that 20% of people felt that there could have been a decrease in sexual harassment cases, since now lesser number of people are there on the streets, so the instances of sexual harassment decrease. But on the contrary, about 12% people also said that there still could be cases of verbal or sexual harassment, since it's now difficult to identify the perpetrators since everybody is masked up. And so in Sri Lanka, while we were doing this survey around November, December 2020, they had come up with some guidelines where they had asked the bus operators to note the number, contact details of the passengers, and also they had given similar instructions to auto and taxi drivers. This was basically to help in contact tracing during the COVID-19 period. But how this impacted the users is what is presented here. So a lot of people said that they were not comfortable in sharing their details, and also said that because after sharing their details, they would be unnecessarily harassed by the drivers. They would call them or they would text them at odd hours, or they would even send them pornographic content on their phones. So they were not comfortable in sharing such information with the drivers. Also, what came out strongly was that almost 20% of the respondents said that they do not want to use public transport, especially buses, or they will completely stop using public transport. So either they have shifted to shared modes like autos or taxis, or they are now completely dependent on their own private vehicles. So lastly, what I would like to emphasize is like now going forward, what should be the next steps? So I think COVID-19 has given all the urban professionals and practitioners an opportunity where we can rethink, reimagine our public spaces and public transport systems, and then think of ways that are sustainable so that more people can come out and use public transport and public spaces. So like obviously one of these options is that we have to follow strict COVID-19 related protocols. So obviously all public transport, wherever we go, we have to ensure that people are masked up now with the vaccinations and everything. I think more people will feel confident using public transport, but apart from that, we also need digital payment options and provision of proper street infrastructure. So there have to be designated walk paths, streets which are well lit, and dedicated cycling infrastructure so that people can access these public spaces and transport without any fear and hesitation. So I think going forward, if we kind of in a way find synergies and find this, we are able to incorporate some of these things in our public policies, then definitely we can provide solutions for public which are affordable and sustainable in the long run. Yeah. So I think I'll stop here and I'll be happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ankita. Next, we have Dr. Mansi Mishra, who is presently the head of Research and Knowledge Management Division in Center for Social Research. She's a keen researcher and an activist and has several acclaimed research studies to her credit on various socioeconomic cultural issues pertaining to women, children, and society. She's a known voice against prenatal sex selection, leading to skewed sex ratio for girls in India, issues surrounding surrogacy, safety, and dignity of women at the workplace, and also women's access to public healthcare facilities during the pandemic. Center for Social Research has organized conferences on women's safety and security at public and private spaces under the theme Safe City is a Smart City, as well as collaborated with Safety Pin for 2 years on making cities safe for women in India, focusing on Bhopal, Gwalior, and Jodhpur. Ma'am, can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you, Aisa, and I'll be sharing my screen. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on urban planning, particularly feminist urban planning, which is much closer to our heart. But right now I'm presenting on post-pandemic and how to make it safer for women and girls of India. So coming to the concept of feminist urban planning, feminist urban planning focuses on those who have been left out of consideration of dominant city planning and development narratives, particularly women and girls and sexual and gender minorities. The concept is not new at the global front, but it is relevant for Asia as mega cities right now. And sensitivity to multiplicity of difference, particularly regarding class, caste, age, sexuality, and disability, among others, has to be maintained on this when we're talking about feminist urban planning. If you go back to history, looking at it from a historical narrative, it puts the care work and gender roles get further defined by our industrial revolution way back, and the whole boundary of caregivers and care economy and everything, the gender roles of remaining within the boundaries of domestic environment falls on women. And the economic growth and social stability of our society is reliant on women. So someone before me, one of the speakers, he pointed out about the healthcare workers. And during this COVID-19, we have implemented almost 5 to 6 projects covering 16 districts of Delhi and Haryana, where those are gender critical districts also. So the front healthcare workers, front level healthcare workers, they narrated us how they have faced the violence, particularly when they have been pushed 24/7 for treating the COVID patients, or like making people aware about the COVID related health issues, sanitation issues. So and their mental well-being. So mental well-being of frontline healthcare workers while providing care for the sick has not been addressed during the last narrative of COVID-19, neither by the side of the government, not by any non-government organizations, but we took it up and we provided it the mental well-being of frontline healthcare workers in association of Institute of Human Behaviors and Allied Sciences. So coming to decision making regarding design of urban spaces, if you look at it, only 17% of registered architects are women. So if women are not there, like, you know, in the decision making process, the spaces, the designs of urban planning cannot be gender friendly or gender neutral. Coming back from COVID, when we think that what COVID-19 data suggests, like most, like 37% of female workforce have been badly affected and they lost their job, and unemployment rate among female have rose to 21.9%. So, and some of the job areas has also become feminized with more women, with more men entering the women-oriented areas. So, if we go back to the UN Women Report, which shows that 4.7 crore women and girls have been pushed into extreme poverty because of their mobility have been restricted and they are out of job. In a country like India, the impact has been worsened with the marginalized communities, and among the most affected among the marginalized community is women. So getting women back into the workforce, because we have already a declining workforce participation rate. If we count it as a 23 point something, in comparison to 2014 report of 28% women in the workforce participation area. So 50% of Indian women like, you know, paid into paid work would boost our GDP by 1.5%. So it is not only women and their issues, but it has a close link with national economy, which we missed most of the time. So what impact the lockdown has on women's mobility? As you know, their mobility has been severely constrained. And that is one of the major reasons why they lost most of the jobs. And if we talk about the safety, so many people talked about it and like highlighted how safety in public places and safety in university grounds, safety in campuses, safety in other areas has been compromised. But if the streets are deserted, normally women face more unsafe environment or their safety has been compromised. Care work, domestic responsibility doubled up, and the violence also doubled up. We got so many cases of domestic violence, and NCW reports also support this data that domestic violence have been doubled. And because of the mobility impacted their care work, many women also who used to be as domestic caregivers also suffered during this. So the cost of transportation, and we should include the financial component and time component, and one of our speakers also pointed out, like if the metros are closed and then we are taking a roundabout transportation, what is the time component of it, time component of the cost? So, and it greatly affects women's job work participation, because she cannot take care of the home, she cannot provide care to the elderly, and she reaches home late, she goes to work late. So this problems arose. So transport freezing of public transport system also reflects powerful class and gender bias during COVID-19. Because this is the public transport system are mostly used by women, and after post COVID, if we speak about, we see that women's mobility, because of the male bias in urban designing planning, it has been severely affected. It stems from a deep-seated patriarchal beliefs and continues to reinforce the stereotype by making it harder for women to access public spaces and transportation. Speaking about my own personal observation, I see that the moment Delhi government announces that women and girls, like, they need not pay at the public transport system, particularly buses. Nowadays, what is happening is, even if you wave towards a bus at the bus stop, if they see only women standing there, they are not stopping at all, because they consider women as non-viable solution, non-viable option for them to stop and pick them up, rather than sensing it as their moral responsibility to stop the bus at the bus stop. So like, wherever you are seeing such a situation, please come up as bystanders and protest, so that the transport system could become more social and morally aware about it. Looking at the negative impacts on the lockdown on urban women's mobility and its relationship to women's workforce participation, empowerment, it was quite visible that if women cannot get back to work soon, they might not be able to do it for a long time. Because the whole responsibility, domestic responsibility, the double burden will fall on our soldier, had already fallen on our soldier, and it would become all the more difficult for them, because certain jobs, as I mentioned, already has been women oriented jobs have become where the men are entering. So that would make it more difficult for her to re-enter the workforce. It is well known globally and within India that women get rationed out of better jobs and out of all jobs when jobs become scarce. So this space and narrative why we need safe places for women and girls immediately. I congratulate WPC for taking up this responsibility for bringing in this discourse, but definitely it has to be taken up with utmost significance and importance. And if we talk about the how we are visioning, it has to the feminist discourse has to build up on this issue. So if you look at the build back better condition after the COVID-19, post COVID-19 thing, so it has to be a build back equal system. Everybody is speaking about gender equality, but how to make a gender responsive system and targeted actions can be taken on it has to be our focus point. So if you look at it, innovative and entrepreneurial solution in partnership with NGOs, CSOs and RWAs, creches and short stay centers could be opened up to facilitate women's return to workplaces. A robust public bicycle sharing system. We normally forgot about it, but with the rise of prices of petrol and diesel, it normally comes to find that bicycling is the most viable option and environment-friendly option. So if we can provide public bicycling system in place, probably this will be more usable, more of utility for women. The state needs to invest in safety, hygiene, and maintenance. What does we mean by that? We talk about public transport system, but how many of you really think about women and their hygiene system, considering that we need to have sanitary napkin vending machines at metro stations and public transport areas, so that she can feel safe and have a more hygienic system in place. And also sanitizer dispenser, those are placed in the various metros, malls and other areas. But whichever area has been so far excluded from it should be including it. So the quick intervention in operation of metro with feasible regulations can be used as advocacy tools under the convenes of government to make it longer term sustainable invest in women's mobility and safety. Last mile connectivity, one of the speakers had already been pointing out it, but I pointed out from the point that suppose we need to reach the bus stop, suppose we need to reach the metro station. So what is the last mile connectivity? Is it available for women and girls? So when we're thinking of opening up schools and the transport system has not yet opened for schools, so do we think about it? How safe it would be for our children, particularly girl children? Staggering the timing of different offices can also provide a hygienic and safe environment for women and girls. With this, I conclude and I welcome any of the question answer based on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mansi. I think the safety of women in public places definitely requires more stakeholders to come together and implement such sustainable solutions. And with this, we are now open to a brief Q&A session. Please drop in your comments and suggestions or questions in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself.
Thank you to all the presenters, and thank you, Aisha, for moderating the session. I think there are two things that resonated with me. One is that exercise or being able to use the public park, that has gone down. And yes, that has definitely, I have completely stopped using the park there where I used to go for a walk. And also that job opportunities, it's really a catch-22 situation. The fact that you can't go, you can't travel certain places, that's and anyway women had fewer job opportunities than men. It's compounding the problem. But the question that I want to ask is to the younger participants and perhaps the presenters. I know Rajiv has already spoken about the difficulties that people of the LGBTQI community have faced in not being able to access public places. But with the young, for the college-going students, how comfortable are you now with going back to college and using the metro, using the bus? Do you foresee any problems, or do you think that it's after this 2-year break, it's what would be your personal take on this for any of the other three presenters?
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, I believe that there are two prevalent perspectives going on amongst the students, if I have to speak. One primary is that many want everything to be open and go offline as it was before the COVID situation. Because the major experience is being gone, and the social interaction is a very key aspect in the growth. Apart from that, in the online mode, there is a huge issue of privacy and the collaboration between the personal life and the official life. It is being very difficult for everyone to manage both, as well as the domestic issue that we are particularly discussing right now. It gets really difficult to manage it at home, where there is no mode to express yourself or to discuss these issues as an open, which can be done outside in a university campus or in your peer groups usually. This is one side, and the other side is there are students who have accommodated and adapted to the online mode and the new whole system of staying at home and working from there. So work from home is a thing that is suitable for few. So they are adapted to it and they do not want to go out. One reason can be that the socialization factor is now uncomfortable for them. And the other can be that they are now very adapted to it and do not feel comfortable in mixing up in the areas where we need interaction. And the safety again plays a major role that many people are debating right now. Like,
some people say it's safe to go out, and we all know that the cases are not stopped yet. So it's an ongoing debate. That is my take on it.
Does anyone have any questions for the presenters?
Gayatri, I don't have a question, but may I just say something?
Yes, please.
Listening to everybody speak and thinking, in fact, of, if I have it correct, they were Rajiv. I think a very important issue that I sort of has been going around in my head as I've been listening to everyone. I don't use public transport. I drive to work, and my driving also is limited because, you know, we are still working from home at the university. We only do partial of the on campus teaching. I think the going back to the normal is, in my mind, not going to be very easy for students, because I think there is such a redefining of public space that has happened in the pandemic, where I was in fact trying to ask myself, suddenly when the men and the women are together again in this public space, what is going to happen to the dynamics of gender interaction? You know, because the women have just not been there. Let me put it like that. They're just not there. So when that space opens up again, it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, I hate saying this, but I'm thinking of an extreme case. And the extreme case that I am thinking of is, for instance, we're talking of rape. We're talking of sexual harassment. I'm trying to think, are we going to be in a situation where the numbers are suddenly going to really go up because the men and women are back together again? Like, the numbers have been very quiet right now. So this was one of the thoughts that I had. And the other thought is the really changing, and this is something, Gayatri, I think we've talked about before, the changing relationships within the family. There has been such a redefining of marital relations, parent-children relations, sibling relations, and so much violence at home has not just been domestic violence in terms of husbands and wives, but also parents and children, where the spaces for mothers have got confined. The freedom that mothers had in terms of, I know I've mentioned this before, the children have gone to school, the husband has gone to work, and then the homemaker has her space. That home is actually her space. Her space has got taken away from her. And there has been violence. There has been not only a violence, but also somebody mentioned telephones and cell phones and communication. The mother's phone has been taken also away from her. I know, for instance, the lady who does my house cleaning, her phone has been taken away from her because her son needs to study. So there's also been this really shift in possessions, if I can call it that, positions, possessions, both of them. So if anybody, any of the experts could comment on it, I'd really be happy to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this. This was such an important interaction. Thanks, Gayatri.
Thanks. Yes, I'm also very apprehensive. Yeah, so if any of the resource persons would like to comment.
Definitely, I would like to comment on it, but the thing that during the COVID-19, when we implemented our projects, we have been in close contact with AXA, Anganwadi workers, frontline healthcare workers, ANMs, and all the active community members. So many of them voiced during these sessions that afternoon sessions suit them best. Why? Why? Because many of their phones have been taken over by their children so that they could attend the online classes. So definitely, Bandana, whatever you mentioned is true in sense, and those spaces of female at the household level is definitely taken over, and her work and violence on her have doubled, going by the NCW report. NCW report itself says that. So to rearrange to this economics of relationship is going to be difficult for everyone. And also the fear of third wave, or the whenever it comes, the different variant is looming large on the top of it. And children's vaccination has been delayed. and the schools have been reopened without any proper guidelines, without any proper options for transportation, and which is becoming very, very difficult for working parents, even for me, like, personally saying. So all these things have to be relooked at, and we need to create that buzz in the society to make people hear these connotations. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Aisha,
Dr. Mishra.
Aisha, your hand is up. Is that?
Yeah, I have a question for Ankita. So I want to know if you have conducted a similar research to understand the mobility patterns of women during COVID in India, and how similar or different these findings are compared to Sri Lanka.
Yeah, thank you, Aisha. So we haven't per se done a specific or similar kind of analysis for COVID in India through a survey. But yeah, like now we are looking at a lot of cities like Mansi had mentioned. We had in 2018-19, we had looked at Bhopal, Gwalior, and Jodhpur, and that time we had looked at how public spaces and public transport were used by women and what are some of the challenges they faced while they were using those spaces. So now going forward, now as cities have started to reopen, we would want to, kind of revisit those cities and see if there has been a difference or in the travel pattern or the use of public spaces for women, or the challenges are similar. But as right now, we don't have a similar study in India.
I think we have time for one more question, if anybody would like to ask. I'm also very apprehensive, as Vandana ma'am said, about what will happen after things go back to normal. And I have a strong feeling that a lot of cases have gone unreported. It's not that there has been a decline, but rather a lack of reporting.
True. I mean, it's frightening. In fact, I'm also thinking that maybe the pandemic could have been an interesting time for legislators and policymakers to rethink public spaces, and to maybe work on, as I think Ankita mentioned, you have even something like a safe sidewalk, you have pedestrian pathways, and you have spaces for people with physical disabilities. All of these could be redefined in times like this when spaces are available, and you could have rethought them, but I don't think that has really happened. We can just hope for the best, I guess.
If in case anyone is thinking about a question, I can just do a few small housekeeping things right now. So the thank you to all the students who presented. We will be giving you your certificates shortly. You can reach out to Aisha for them. Damayanti, would you like to say a few words, or Jyoti?
Gayatri, thank you. And yeah, it was a very interesting discussion. And actually, yesterday only we had a discussion with people from the Bastis of Delhi, and there the impact of COVID, which has been felt by the daily wages and especially the women and all that women. And in a sense, this whole issue has kind of brought out. I mean, I don't know how we go about it, but there is definitely a need to organize around these issues. One is knowing what is happening, and the other is like something like the bystander initiative, which was taken, or which you've also been doing in the past. But we need to go beyond just looking at what is happening or what may happen, but also initiate some kind of response mechanism. I mean, yeah, we can talk to policymakers and all that, but this has to be a consistent effort. And to make it consistent, it needs to be organized across organizations, across stakeholders. And I think this issue of public safety of women in public spaces is so crucial. also for the very, very large number of informal sector workers who, despite whatever is the situation, they are desperately trying to get back to their works which they have lost, and their indebtedness has increased. And I mean, along with that, this would be a double, triple burden. I don't know. So one needs to give some thought to that.
And finally, I think that what Ananya said about people having just got used to this new normal and not wanting, it's actually quite dangerous, because you will have to step out at some point or the other, whether it's for medical or some emergency travel. And the situation where you cannot, it cannot be in a permanent situation. So it has to come to an end. So we cannot get used to this situation as the new normal.
And I would also like to add one more thing, that, whenever we look at options and we look at ways to deal with things, it's very natural. We look at it from our own perspective, but it's more important to look at it from the perspective of the majority. Like, we may think that, okay, we shift to private vehicles because we don't want to, we feel unsafe because of the COVID. But again, what about the majority? So the policy responses have to be more attuned to the majority. That is very, very significant. And there's always going to be countervailing pressures, but that has to be the kind of thing which needs to be addressed, and not a personal perspective in that sense.
Okay, so we have only 1 minute left. For the student presenters, we have taken some photographs and quotations. I've been taking some quotations of what you've been saying, but we won't put them on our social media until we have your consent. So I will write to you after the conclusion of this webinar, probably by tomorrow, and ask, and also with the resource persons, if WPC can put up those quotations from you on our social media handles. And I don't see any more questions. So thank you to Ankita and to Dr. Manse for joining us today. Thank you to Janki Devi, to the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, to Vandana Madan, Damayanti, Jyoti, and thanks Aisha for moderating the session. Have a good evening then. Night.
Thank you, Gayatri and Aisha. Thank you, WPC.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you, Damayanti. Bye-bye, and all the best for the future.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you also to all the presenters. An event is as good as the participation from the presenters. So it was really nice to hear the perspectives from the students, and of course also our resource persons. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.